All right, let's get started then. Yeah. Um, yeah, so this session was going to be about um, organics and how we get it to people, what Mark has been doing to getting it to people. And Mark will tell us about his business, but really the idea was um, the Soil Association Organic Market Report tells us that things have been growing. There's more popular demand and optimism in the sector, but we're way behind EU countries, where, of course, in some countries, 50% of the basics, like milk and bread, is already organic, what people buy. And certainly there's really high targets for public procurement. And that's really how they got it off the ground because it's been proven by European examples to grow the whole sector because it means that there is demand, of course, and then suppliers will follow. And really, how they got that off the ground, they started work on that in the 1980s, even as early as that, but mostly, I think, the 90s, by raising awareness of what organic means and how it ticks all the boxes for like preventing the further loss of biodiversity and carbon emissions and all that stuff, soil quality and the lack of, the prevention of erosion and degrading of soil and so on. And also by investment in training of catering staff so they could, for example, serve better but less meat and substitute other ingredients, developing recipes so you're not just buying this more expensive organic meat at the premium. Um, all sorts of things that make recipes and also bring the message about organic to not just the catering staff, but other people in their organization. So the catering staff actually are informed about what they're doing and feel an incentive to get behind that agenda. And the general public as well, because obviously it's hard for governments to spend money on things that are only for the elite, you know, for people that have more money to pay for it. If that's perceived as such, then it can't really go into the public purse. It's a hard policy to sell if it's not um, owned by the general public. So that's how they got it off the ground in the EU. We're way behind. We have a very small baseline where we're starting from, but actually we're doing quite well, and there's a lot of optimism. And on our side, what's really positive at the moment is that we have an organic action plan. We have some financial supports for conversion. We're doing well on our targets for land grow, land grown organically. We have a target for that, and that's going well. I think we've exceeded the target way beyond what we said we were going to do. And that organic action plan was launched in January, and it's funded for deliveries in the first year. Now, with a new government, we never know what's going to happen in the second year, but we're working on it. But most of all, we have really strong, good practice that we can build on. And Mark, you're one of them, no pressure. So
Yeah.
maybe you can tell us a bit about where you're at, really. What kind of methods, what do you do at your farm? What kind of produce do you sell, to whom, what the marketing and economics of this looks like? And what your plans are for next steps, and maybe end with some reflections on what the challenges have been, how you got here, what motivated you, and any surprises along the way. Um,
Okay.
and then we can open it for questions and see what other people are, then we have a background against what we want to open up the conversation about. I'll
Okay.
shout meantime.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Meet. Um, Farm in the Scottish borders on a fairly traditional livestock farm. The business ran as a family farming business for about 20 or 30 years. And in 2018, the business was split, and myself and my partner Leslie and my kids Ali and Ben moved to the farm at East Mains, and we went from being 850 acres farmed conventionally to 425 acres. So that left us with quite a lot of challenges. Economically, it became apparent that farming on a smaller scale was going to be tough. In 2019, the Brexit referendum came along, and we were faced with the prospect of what the unknown. We didn't know how we were going to be supported financially going forward. So between Leslie and myself, we started to look towards organic as being a niche market for our produce, hopefully adding value to what we sell. So on our farm, we have 425 acres, of which 95 acres are rough grazing, and there's only 45 acres under arable crops. The rest is permanent grass or temporary grass. And we have 85 suckler cows, and we fatten the progeny of them. We have moved to a paddock grazing system, an American system known as AMP grazing, managed paddocks. We move the cows every day to a new paddock through the summertime. That is adapted towards the grass growth at that time or the demands of the animals at that time. So the paddock at this time of year, where we're early in the summer or late spring, you might get 55 cows might be going into a paddock with 2 acres. But as the growth becomes better as the summer goes on, they won't go back into that paddock for a minimum of 45 days, left to rest and recover. And by then, we might find that the 55 cows only require 1 acre. So that's a basis of our business, is producing quality beef. Of our cows, 30 of them are pedigree beef shorthorns. We also have a small amount of sheep. Find it tough to get the sheep into this rotational grazing system. They want to break through the temporary fences and things. So that has been a big challenge. And this summer, we're going to start with a small amount of poultry, of laying birds, maybe only 50 or 60, in a mobile unit that will get moved behind the cattle and hopefully disperse the dung behind the cattle and lower worm burdens. And we would be looking to market those eggs locally as panicked, pasture-raised quality eggs. So that's really the crux of our business. Our arable side is only 45 acres, of which we grow oats, which are grown with a companion crop of beans, and that crop is undersown to try and reduce the amount of pressure of weeds that are coming through with a mixture of crimson clover, balanza clover, Italian ryegrass, Timothy grass, and cocksfoot. So in our arable crop, instead of having a monocrop of oats, we've actually got 7 different species growing in our field. And that is hopefully allowing more mycorrhizal fungi of variant types to establish in our soil and feed our microbial masses that we have hopefully in our soil. So that's the real crux of our business. In terms of Mark, sorry.
Can I ask, Mark, are some of those crops for your for feed, for supplementary feeding?
Yes, they are. All of it goes for supplementary feeding, for fattening our cattle. We would love to fatten them on a grass-only diet, but it is a big challenge that the farm's sitting at 550 feet. And by the time our cattle get to a size where they're becoming near to fattening, unfortunately, you're getting into October or November, and the grass quality is diminishing at that time. So our fattening cattle have to come inside, and we give them as small amount of feed as we possibly can to achieve the market specifications for what we're selling. In terms of marketing, hand all of that over to a local company um, who we supply big outlets with our organic produce. We're not marketing anything in the way of beef ourselves at this moment. Our farming ethos has been to try and achieve sustainability on all fronts. We have two wind turbines, the house has solar panels, we have a large vegetable garden and a polytunnel that we want to make sure that we can achieve quality food for ourselves immediately. Then we're going to try and radiate that out. Our kids, Ali's 10, Ben's 7, that as time goes on, we'll look to market more into our local community. Hopefully, in a year's time, I'm finding that with our rotational grazing system, that I can carry more livestock than I was when I first turned organic. And I think economically, I will be able to employ somebody within the next year because I think we'll end up over 100 cows. And there's a huge premium on organic cattle now, and that will more than pay for this a salary. And if we could employ someone, we'd like to start some different enterprises. We'd probably try some pasture reared meat birds as well. We have recently just built a small shed where we're going to house some refrigeration. And as time goes on, we're going to build slowly at this. We'll try and supply our immediate local community. That's our aim.
Interesting. When did you go organic, Mark? When were you?
We're we're
How
we're,
did that conversion
we're
process?
very recent converts, Lise.
Right.
We became fully organic last year in 2025, and we went organic in 2022. But I missed the funding window for the EAT scheme to receive funding that year, so I had to wait a further year before I got financial backing for that.
Right. Yeah. Others might have questions for you as well for this background, but yeah, interesting. What motivated you?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one. I think primarily there is that financial motivation that you thought we've gone to a smaller farm.
Yeah.
All you ever hear, and my agricultural background and my agricultural training at Edinburgh University in the 1980s was that economies of scale dictate. It's always had hammered at us, but I don't believe that anymore. I don't believe that a bigger farm is necessarily more efficient than a small farm at all. So we were going to a smaller unit, so there was the fear that financially would struggle. But I'm delighted to say and to report that in the last 4 years, we've trebled the farm profit. And
Wow.
I foresee our profit increasing again this year. Quite a part of that has come off the back of increased livestock values, but our system, our rotational grazing system, is absolutely paying dividends. So that was one of the precursors. The other one was definitely my partner Leslie, who came from a holistic health background, and she had massive issues about. In the past, I was a spray operator, and I was quite late in life in meeting Leslie, and you know, for 5 or 6 years where I was spreading pesticides or spraying pesticides, Leslie was not at all happy about this. And many's a breakfast time, an iPad was shoved at me, and I was asked to have a little look at this debate on glyphosate or whatever it might be, phosphates in drinking water or whatever. The health implications of Leslie got this way before me, that healthy soils breed healthy animals, which allow healthy food, which allows healthy humans. So without doubt, there was pressure from Leslie as well as economics. So, those were the main drivers for me. I
Interesting,
hate to
isn't
say at this juncture that in terms of looking after the habitats, things like that, I'm afraid I was a pretty mainstream farmer and I was working long hours and I hadn't a lot of time to focus on the environment. And it's one of the great joys of being an organic farmer. I've more time on my hands, and because you need to get your soil right and your environment right, more time studying it, and it's been a real eye opener for me having time to look for dung beetles and observe what wildflowers are starting to show on the farm and increase the amounts of butterflies and birds. And of course, our family. I'm in my late 50s, and I've got a young family that you start to look towards the future. And there is an old adage that you should hand on your farm to the next generation in better heart than what you received it. And I could see fine that my kids were not. If I continued on the route that I was going, I was depleting my soils, that there was no way I was handing them better soils than what I had received from my father. So, that was another thing that started to become very apparent as soon as I started to go organic. I started to read books and look at stuff on Facebook and join, groups on Facebook that, the big thing is the soil. You got to get that right. And, it became very apparent early on that our soil wasn't right, and we employed a soil microbiologist to come out and take some samples. And I was growing great crops. Initially, it looked outwardly as if I was achieving good yields, but all I had was a growing medium. Our soil was a growing medium, and a whole load of expensive inputs were getting put into that. And when this soil microbiologist came back with his report, I presumed because I was getting decent yields that my soil was fine. And I was staggered, when I found out there was literally no fungi in my soil, that bacterial numbers were low, nematodes, and, these sort of things almost were, non-existent. Our soil was in poor shape.
isn't that interesting how, I mean, what you're talking about is a combination of financial motive because the number of acres went down and you still had to make a living, but
Yes.
then being exposed to a whole different way of looking at things and at the same time
Yeah.
slowing down and having the time to think about
Yeah.
that and your family
Yeah.
coming along, and it sounds like a major thing, isn't it? I mean, it
Yeah.
raises all
Yeah.
sorts of questions about what motivates people and how you make the time to even think about these things.
Yeah,
Joe, you're
yeah.
unmuted. Did you have a
That
question?
is that. Sorry to butt in, Mies, but that is maybe potentially one of the big problems for a lot of farmers is that
Yeah,
they're on that hamster wheel of production, that they're
yeah.
working long hours, running a big business. That where do you find hours to start and read the countless books that I've read on organic production and looking at different things and going away and visiting organic farmers locally to find out what they are doing is it's just finding the time to have just a bit of time to look at something different.
Yeah, and attending sessions like this.
Yeah,
Joe,
yeah.
you were going to
But
say
in
something.
fairness,
Yes.
the mainstream farming press is changing. That I subscribe to a magazine that I've got in front of me here, the Farmer's Guardian, and it's a weekly, and there'll be something on regen in it every week. There
Yeah.
it is good.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
you went back 10 years ago, you really just were. There was an occasional article, maybe every 6 months. There was nothing on these things. So
Mhm.
there is
I've just
momentum there without question.
I was just going to say that, it's such a good message. It's absolutely the message as super that we want to put out there, exactly what you're saying. The whole the wheel of life, from the livestock to the dung to the biodiversity to the cropping to the size of farm, it all just fits so well. And in the health piece, it's also the fact that you were a sprayer yourself. For me, that's a really big thing for the farmer themselves, the actual person who is spraying those chemicals all the time. And perhaps, okay, you'll wear a mask and you'll wear protective clothing as well, but there's always the implications of the risk with the chemicals you're using for yourself, as well as the crops and the wider health, you know.
Yeah, without doubt, but it does take time to look at these things and start to look into the implications of pesticides on human health, and the
Mm.
implications of potentially something like glyphosate and the human microbiome, the gut microbiome, what's it doing there, and the long-term
Yeah.
effects that's having on human health. It's just stuff that I never even considered. I didn't have access to that sort of information in the past. So I
Hmm.
And
farmed on blindly, in truth.
and
What?
surprisingly, that is not very well known either. You don't hear it, do you, in public
No.
circles? Yeah. Sorry,
Well,
Joe. Yeah.
No, not at all. I was just going to ask a little bit more about you're saying you've trebled the farm income. That's brilliant,
no,
fascinating. And it's
I'll correct you, Joe. I haven't trebled the farm income. I've done better than that. I've trebled the farm profit.
profit. Yeah,
Yes.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So
It's
you
no
said
good
obviously,
it's no good increasing income. It's the profit that counts at the end of the day.
yeah, yeah. Obviously, you said about the good livestock values at the moment, and your rotational grazing's been great. But could you sort of explain the troubling of the profit a bit more? What else is the
Yes.
cost of your
Yeah.
inputs has gone down, obviously.
Yeah. Massively. The first year I went organic, um, the the war in the Ukraine was on, and fertilizer prices had gone sky high. That if I had saved 50,000 on fertilizer, um, so that's 50,000 I didn't have to find. But
Yeah.
we have transitioned from having all our livestock inside to trying to work with, well, we work with beef shorthorn cows, so they're a traditional British breed, and we've tried to reduce the size of our cows. That we now outwinter all our cows. They come in for a month at calving. If I was younger, I'd probably calf them outside, but I like the comfort of having them inside for a month. Our weaned calves, our young stock are all outwintered as well. Now, we only have 45 acres of arable. So before I was having to buy in straw, and I am saving 20,000 a year on straw. Since I became organic certified, I would say on an average carcass of 300 kilo carcass, we're receiving a premium of close to £300 a head. So when you tally up all of that, that's where my trebling of profits come. I have to say that my profit initially was not a sustainable profit. I had cut numbers back, thinking that, if I wasn't applying fertilizer, how was I going to have grass growth? Initially, I had 90 cows, and I dropped them down. The kids were young. COVID was on the go, and I was worried. I'm a one-man band. I was worried about calving cows myself. That we dropped down to 50 cows. So cow numbers have gone up. I'm now approaching where I was before with cow numbers, but I think I'm growing my grass so well with this rotational grazing system that I have, that I think I can grow more grass now than when I was applying 250 kilos a hectare of nitrogen. Because I've given it a rest period, I'm not set stocking, that I think we're having a smaller cow, I'll end up with 110 cows. I'll end up with more cows than when I was putting on synthetic fertilizer. So, that where I am just now at 80 cows, that output from 80 to 110 would be another 60,000 of output for no input. I'm not buying fertilizer. I'm just growing my grass more efficiently.
That's interesting. Also changing the breed of cow, right? But smaller cows
Yeah,
means less meat in the end when you process them, no?
yeah. Well, the answer to that, Niece, is keep some more cows. Keep more individual cows. If you're worried about your output, then just keep some more. You don't worry too much about the output from each individual cow.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
There's been plenty of studies that if you go over a certain weight of cow, you start to lose a degree of fertility as well. So, there's a level where there's an efficient level of cow, and if they get too big, they become inefficient. So
Yeah.
it's hitting
And
a
I'm sure that
hitting
something about
a medium with hitting a balance.
damage to the soil with the weight.
Yeah, well, the bigger
Yeah.
cow, the bigger cows I had of my pedigree cows. Yeah, I've just sort of they've run their course. I've moved them through the system, but they didn't suit out wintering because they did too much damage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what are the short ones like for calving? Are they quite easy to calve?
Yeah, they've got a massive pelvic width, so they calf very well. But, I hope there isn't shorthorn breeders listening to this. There's too many of the shorthorn breeders that are, they're a very docile breed, so that they make for a good animal for showing because they're nice and
Mhm.
quiet. Then the problem with showing is the animal that picks up the prize is usually the big one, so it becomes a bit of a spiral that the animals get bigger and bigger. So that they are getting to the stage where there's too many big shorthorn bulls that they need to pay more attention to the commercial realities of calving ease and gestation length, and you know, not allowing the chase and the ticket to dictate how the breed goes in the future.
Yeah. And
And
that
do their feet do okay outside? You know, if you're out wintering them for most of the year, are they okay feet wise?
Yeah, better than inside in my opinion, Joe. That cattle that are in traditional straw bedded sheds end up with more feet problems than mine outside. The big difference I've noticed, I've come off the back of three unbelievable calvings where I've had terrific success in terms of calving ease and keeping calves living. And this came off the back of me having bits of struggles with calving. And I was watching something on Facebook. It was a North American breeder, and the comments below were that, well, all you British breeders have your cows inside the whole time, and your cows are in a little shed, and they become soft and lazy. They're not using their pelvic muscles to walk enough, so they're not tuned, they're not toned enough when it comes to calving. So I thought that made a devil of a lot of sense. So I did put out a whole bunch of cows, and they were outside, and they're walking over a 30-acre field. These fields, they're I end up ploughing up these fields, and they go into crop the next year because they do make a mess of them. But because the cows are moving a lot and they only come in for a month, they're physically fit. And I'm
Yeah.
finding that where I would watch on calving cameras, and it was taking a cow 3 hours to calf, now I miss a whole load of them. They're calving in an hour and a half. They're calving quicker. But I have a breeding program where I'm trying to breed for calving ease. So, that's a combination of things. But the cows are definitely physically fitter.
that's amazing, isn't it? It's all related, isn't it? It's like all of it.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Mies, it's the more I read of it and the more I read about organic systems, it's you just got to try and align yourself with nature. And what would nature do, in the background of our domestic animals? They weren't kept in a little shed all winter. They were out moving freely, and that's if
Yeah.
you try and work your system to be more in line with nature, the more success you'll have. So that's the basis of our paddock grazing system is its biomimicry. We're trying to mimic what the large herbivores, for instance, the North American bison would do. That they would graze for one day, then they'd move on, and it might be a year before they came back to that pasture again. So that allows, you've got huge stocking density of animals going over that, peeing and pooping and fertilizing it, then it's left for a long rest period. So that's feeding the microbes, and it's allowing the wild flowers. They've got time with a long rest period to develop and flower. So you're getting more biodiversity in your field. And the more biodiversity, that's the one challenge I have when my improved fields don't have enough biodiversity in them just now. The more diverse the diet my animal eats, I firmly believe the better the rumen is going to work, the less methane they're going to produce, and the more they're going to self-medicate and look after themselves.
Thank you. That's a really, really, detailed, easy to see how that all happens, isn't it? And I'm fascinated about how you learn all this stuff over the years. What did you turn to? Where is your resources? Or was it just looking at things slowing down and just
There's,
observing? Yeah,
when I first went organic, I approached who I knew to be a local organic farmer, a guy that farmed within 20 miles of us. And I asked him to come over and have a look at, this was me being extremely naive. I asked him to come over and see if our farm was suited to being an organic farm. And I paid him a consultancy fee. I demanded that I paid him it. I wasn't wanting it as a friend. I wanted to come and have a look. And of course, he looked at it as, of course, it's suitable. Every farm's suitable for being an organic farm. So, these are the sort of things that, then once you start on that path of doing a little bit of research, you find out there's certain books that come up
yeah,
again and again, that books that people have read that,
yeah,
are a sort of basic introduction to organic farming.
yeah. Talking to
Yeah.
people, basic books. You said
Yeah.
you missed the support scheme, but probably somebody told you about that, and the following year you were on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I had a land agent that I did work with in terms of the EEC scheme, the Agri-Environment Climate Scheme,
yeah,
and he informed me that I should have applied through that scheme, but
yeah,
unfortunately the window was closed by then.
yeah. And do you
I'm
now?
aware, Mies, I've kind of gone on about animal husbandry a lot, and I've not mentioned very much about marketing and how we
Yeah, yeah,
try and get
please.
more organic produce out there. The big problem I have on our farm in particular is that there is no abattoirs locally for us to try and slaughter animals. And then it becomes a real problem that our closest one's at Wishaw, which is an hour and a half's drive for me, that, to transport animals there, then have to go back and pick up a carcass, you know, you're losing a day a week or certainly a morning a week if you do that regularly. That's a real stumbling block for us. I don't know. We've spoken about this locally, how we get access to a local abattoir, whether we can have a mobile one or whatever. But that is definitely an issue.
Yeah, yeah.
So, could I just, is there any funding comes through this year in rural support for the likes of abattoirs for local processing?
I think there's absolutely none, Seamus, at all.
Right.
We're
There's a huge,
unfortunately at that disconnect between
right.
politicians and food producers, where in truth, well, a lot of politicians who are maybe from a different viewpoint from me as a livestock producer, that an abattoir is a dirty word to them. They don't want meat production.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's, that I think an abattoir, it would have to be some sort of farmer cooperative, or, it would have to be self-funded.
Yeah, that's good point. Just a couple of general questions, if you don't mind, Mark. Just
Please do.
when you said I saw another example, an organic farmer, regenerative amp grazing in Fife, Balburney, Johnny Balfour. I don't know if you've come across him. So he's got a case study that was funded by Sustain, and I think it was Sustain. So one of the things he did was to he didn't harvest the fodder crops. He just let the cattle onto the fodder crops. But I see you've got the grass, and you're okay with the grass for them all year round, are you? Or do they need fodder as well? They're okay with the grass. Yeah, he just got a different thing. He's with Pastures for Life in doing that. The other question: did you look at carbon credits and getting your soil carbon checked and seeing if you can get? Yeah,
that's a very good question to ask, Miss Seamus. We did look at that, and I didn't have enough knowledge of where I would go with this. And there's a company, we looked into this, there's a company called Regenerative Outcomes.
Yeah.
Now, this company, I did a wee bit of looking into it, and they seem to be the best company to look after my carbon credits.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
we had planted 11 kilometres of hedging, and I thought, I knew from my carbon audit that I would be getting closer to hopefully having carbon credits.
Right.
So I signed up with Regenerative Outcomes, and hopefully I will receive some income in the next 2 or 3 years from them for carbon credits. They seem to be a very sound business. The one thing they gave was mentoring.
Right.
They have an online hookup with a company that has 3 or 4 of the very best regenerative farming brains in America.
Right.
The company's called Understanding Ag. And, you know, they've got a guy called Ray Archuleta, who's a world-renowned soil scientist. Got a Dr. Alan Williams, who is a leading expert on regenerative grazing, and another guy called Gabe Brown, who's a renowned regenerative farmer. So I found by allowing them to take over the management of potentially my carbon credits, they have given me an educational tool in exchange, because they need farmers to work for our soil to achieve an increase in carbon. They need to educate farmers that sign up for them on how to best implement these schemes so that they can get a return. So I hope that kind of answers you a little bit, Seamus.
That's great. What was the name of the organisation that Regenerative Outcomes pointed you towards?
Understanding Ag.
Understanding Ag, yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, that's great, Mark. I did a survey after the Regenerative Agriculture Gathering in Falkland in 2024, and some of the things that came out of that is a lot of what you're saying about people. You know, it kind of all fits. There were people who came in and said they had a really positive attitude and a strong awareness, and they were doing a lot. And they had some solutions that they could offer to people, and, you know, around skills and you know, developing knowledge and skills. And maybe some were saying they could help with funding, and some were going to help with policy. We had politicians and whatnot there. Ariane Burgess was there, and then we had others who were not quite, you know, the next lot coming along. In terms of who answered it, there were people who came to the gathering in the first place, and then some of them answered filled in the survey. So we had the ones who are doing loads, and we had the others who are, I want to do more, and I know a bit about it, and I kind of want to do something, and I'm not really doing very much, but these are the things that I need. And just what you were saying there, you know, how to develop the awareness around it, have a community of practice so that they were able to, you know, tap into people who are already doing it. And that Understanding Ag and the Regen Outcomes kind of would be part of the support I think that people are looking for in general. So it kind of matches into what you're saying, what I was picking up from this survey, and that's really that's really good. I one of the areas that you mentioned was a hedges and shelter belts where you're getting the carbon credits.
It certainly would help. Yeah.
And about the soil itself, did they do any soil measurements to see how you were building up carbon in the soil?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
They did a baseline last spring, where they were taking carbon. They were taking soil samples to 60 centimeters. I think they took away maybe about 150 samples.
Right. Great. The other question I had was, have you looked at or considering farm visits or a shop there?
I would. It's something I'd be interested in, Seamus. My problem right now is I'm a one-man band, and our kids are home educated. That it's time, but you know, I need to make my farm more resilient. I need to be employing someone in the next year, or certainly in the next year, so that if anything happens to me, I can fall back on someone. So I just need more labour, have more time to take on visits.
Yeah. And how do you get your produce to market? You were going to come on to that anyway. Just interested.
Yeah, well, at this point, Seamus, we're not marketing very much. As a one-man band, looking after 80 cows and the 80, the replacements, the 80 fattening cattle behind them, and with kids getting home educated, I just haven't got time just now to do a lot of marketing. But I haven't had a driver towards it because the organic livestock values for our beef are so great just now that it might be doubtful if it's worth me trying to slaughter animals and sell them myself.
Right. So
but going forward,
I
I have that in my mind that I want to be supplying my local area. I want that to be a service I provide. That as my kids get older, down the line, we'd love to have a farm shop and a butchery and stuff like that.
Right.
Absolutely. If it got, the holy grail for me would be to have a restaurant as well, so that we've got full circle, that everything's staying on the farm, then getting sold.
Yeah. One of the things I'm looking at, Mark, in the local food system is working with some of the community food hubs and having them as a marketplace, and they where the center population is effectively, that they would be the ones who would be maybe have the cafe going or restaurant going with it as well, and also a marketplace with some refrigeration so people can buy really direct from you, but there's that bit, the abattoir bit, I can see as a snag for you right now. But when you're talking to Johnny Balfour, he's only getting 12 head a year direct to market, through the abattoir, and the rest are going into the marketplace. So he would like to be doing more in that bit as well. But that's what I'm trying to see, what that missing piece of, and filling it in with some of the community hubs, and the one in Edinburgh is doing some of that already. They're already getting some meats in, and so just trying to find the way to it, and the community food hubs where there's more than just the food. It's supporting people. Some of it is giving people access to the food economically, but also some people don't know how to cook a steak, and how do you help them? How do you help them with that, and to cook a meal, helping with that as well. But having a place where they're looking after the marketing or the sales bit of it. It's not like a farmer's market where you have to spend the day getting 2 days, half a day getting ready and a half a day knocking it down and getting out there. So that's something that I'm looking at. I just wonder if that's something that might help you down where you are.
They are going to trial a community hub down in the Borders this summer.
Right.
So,
Great.
We've signed up to that, but we haven't got much to offer now.
Right.
Yeah, so that's all interesting, isn't it? That the logistics
can I
prevent
just
you from...
very briefly, can I very briefly add to that? There's a young lad who's just become an organic farmer near Lauder, fully certified organic, and he's done a tremendous job. That in the local village of Oxton, there's a community shop, and he's supplying them with belted Galway beef, organic Galway beef. So that's terrific to see.
Yeah, but that's because he's got a shop near his house, near his farm. But what you're describing is all this extra logistics that comes with, and the more logistics, the more different places you have to go, and these small quantities, isn't it? So I guess another way of looking at it is, and a question to ask you is, can this stuff be scaled up in some way without losing the quality? And what would your barriers be?
Without doubt, I have a friend down the road who's a market gardener, and he ran a guest house in France for 17 years. And he produced a market garden attached to his guest house. And I don't know how the supermarket charter works in France, but he legally had access with his produce that the local supermarkets had to give him shelf space.
Wow.
So the supermarket charter has to be something that's looked at as to how do our local market gardeners gain access to these,
Yeah.
big franchises.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a sense that the community spaces, which are kind of dedicated to supporting the local community in the first place, that's something that I'm looking at and working with Edinburgh Community Food, who are really big on this, and they have a market a couple of days a week, and they getting local produce into it, and they're all, some of it's organic, and they're getting they've got a big organic stall, and they've got a couple of other racks non-organic, and they've also got the meats in beside it as well, so the refrigeration there too. So that's an opportunity as well if we can't get it into the supermarkets, and it's a not-for-profit, so it's kind of, there's a huge amount of money taken out from the supermarkets, and it's owned by the likes of BlackRock and investment funds, and the profit goes offshore. We don't even get the tax on it. So it's quite an extractive system in the middle, and that's kind of a little bit of push towards the community hub being the place where they provide the market access. And the other model that's running down in Dumfries and Galloway is the producers on a Monday say, this is what I'll have available on the Friday. And then people order up against it. And they reach out to the producers, or they've arranged for the hub, the transport in between, and then they do the distribution, the boxing up and shipping it out again, or community hubs that people come and collect it from. I think they've got 5 different hubs spread around an area 50 miles where people come and pick up what's put together. So,
well, I mean, hats off to you, Seamus. I think the idea of the community hubs has to be the way to try and get access at a reasonable price for the greater public, or the ones that really can't afford organic produce. How do you get out there apart from community hubs and community growing spaces?
Yeah, and there's a big amount of work going on that access, affordable access through the community hubs, through that. So that's it's kind of that's happening already. So it's a space, it's a market, it's people there. So, and the will to get more affordable food to people. So if we can put out the bit in the middle and you get a fair price and it's affordable for more people, then all to the good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what I was alluding to, sorry, is that if we had access, market gardeners had more easily accessible supermarkets with their produce, then inevitably what you're producing, it's coming up at sell-by date, and it's going to be sold at a knockdown price. That by hook or by crook, it's going to allow some members of the public access to organic produce at an affordable price.
Yeah, I mean, another way, we have only a few minutes left, but maybe that was our last question then. Any reflections on the other way of getting this produce, this excellent produce, to the public would be public procurement. Any thoughts on that?
I've got a point for you right here. This week's Farmer's Guardian. Can you see that? Can you see the headline there?
Amount of Chinese chicken in school meals causes concern. Yeah. Chinese chickens.
Yeah. This is in Merthyr Tydfil in Wales. The council sourced 99% of its chicken for school meals from Thailand and China.
Madness.
The figure being quoted here, Far Eastern imports since the general election of 2024 have gone up 172%. So,
the next thing will be powdered chicken.
Public procurement's got a hell of a long way to go to get things sorted out. So the one thing I'm going to finish with me is how do you get value how does the government get value? Well, there's a farmer author that goes by the name of James Rebanks, a Cumbrian lad.
Yeah.
And he was on the BBC Today programme, and the heading of that programme was Beyond Ultra Processed Foods. James Brebanks was joined by a panel of experts to find out the true cost of ultra-processed foods, including health issues, social care, and lost productivity of workers. The figure they came up with was that the annual cost was £268 billion, which equates to the whole NHS budget. So the point that has to be pushed to politicians is that organic food and organic production systems have got a devil of a lot to offer in terms of producing healthy. We maybe can't stop the it's not just because it's organic doesn't mean it's ultra processed food, but it can allow a raw ingredient to be there for those that have the knowledge how to produce a healthy meal. That the cost there is staggering. And added to that, in the UK, England and water companies spent last year between 110 and 120 million pounds specifically removing pesticides from drinking water.
Right.
So there's some bargaining tools there to go at with government as to where you're getting value for money from organic production.
Yeah, avoidable costs. I mean, that is back to the. So I must have thought that we were only doing an hour, but we actually have an hour and a half, so we've got a whole more half hour if we want to. But yeah, no, avoidable costs. But we're talking about public messaging, aren't we? Messaging to the public, to get this whole agenda talked about, isn't it? And then you have all the problem is lobbying and how all the cost of the use of glyphosate and ultra processed foods ingredients, and it's all hidden, isn't it?
It's all this is more stuff that Joe will be far more clued up on than I am, but to try and tackle some of these issues, you're ultimately taking on the biggest hitters in world business. You're talking about pharmaceutical companies and ultra processed food and drink producers, huge parent companies that own both, that produce seed, that produce pesticide, that produce pharmaceuticals. They've got a foot in every camp along the way.
Yeah,
it's a big job fighting them, and
And unfortunately, often you find that some of the trials that are done on farm in terms of glyphosate and things like that are funded by some of these big, seed and pesticide companies. So it's, well, not pesticides, but, fertilizers, whatever it be. So these big guys have clout in the market and they can afford to do trials that would make their products look not so bad. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe then the question is, do you speak to your colleagues about it? Do you know of other people in your area that are trying to do things and what do they do? Is your model the model that's going from where you stand? Your
In terms
model
of
of selling, trying to minimize the marketing and going for the larger producers. It's supermarket
well,
you sell to, right? Mark
that is,
Spencer's?
I'm
Yeah.
selling to the supermarket. That is me being a traditional producer, because traditionally farmers have now, we've sold wholesale. We're not in retailers. We've allowed ourselves to become wholesalers.
Yeah.
But ultimately, down the line, it might be my kids that do it. That I hope I become a retailer. I hope I've got vending machines selling eggs, and there's lots of things we can do.
Yeah, and also have the time to work with these local food hubs and things like that is what you're seeing, isn't it? Yeah.
I need to have a level of profitability that allows me to employ people, and I need to be employing people.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking about your neighbors. They're near enough.
Yeah.
Peel them.
Yeah.
You know, like that,
there's
meadows.
we've got a couple of market gardeners on our doorstep that are both organic and they do a wee bit of we take a produce box from them weekly to try and say whether we've got a big garden ourselves, but we try to support them. We're trying to subsidise them a bit. There's
East Coast
well,
Organics and Mungo's
yeah, no,
Wells and
in my immediate farming area, there's two guys that have gone, within a 5 mile radius, there's two guys that have gone organic in the last 4 or 5 years, apart from ourselves. So
that gives hope.
it's happening. It's happening. I think economically it'll happen that, that in the fullness of time, you're not going to have the petrochemical industry there to supply synthetic fertilizer the way it is. So someone's going to have to change anyway.
At an
Then
affordable price.
We can't keep polluting our waterways and our soils. I mean, that's just a case of education that probably we need to do more in terms of trying to get organic onto the curriculum with agricultural learning colleges or whatever, any of these areas, platforms.
Yeah, so it's getting the message across, so more people sign up, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
no easy answers on that one.
I don't think there's any easy answers. It's just a case of there is definitely a groundswell out there that we meet through our home education of our kids. We meet families, similar families, and they're all looking for healthy, organic, home-produced food.
And tasty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have any last comments? Any last questions?
Just something I might add in there. Sorry if there's no one else. I got some research done at Napier University, and we looked at some of the messages that might help the community food hub that people would get into. Most people said they trusted local food. They weren't doing a lot of their shopping locally. Maybe some of them a few things, others nearly all at the supermarket. But things about like having fresh local stuff nearby, helping the local community to thrive, putting the money back into community pockets. There was a good bit on that as well. And the other ones that Eat for the Earth, supporting regenerative farms right here in East Central Scotland. They were the main things that kind of 90% of the respondents said they were the messages that they put in at number one kind of. So there's it's just some insights there about having it convenient and supporting the local community and supporting organic or regenerative is something that people will want to do. But I think if you move from wholesale to supplying direct, and the examples over in Dumfries and Galloway with the online system, that you may be getting a better price because you're going direct, but people are able to get it's more affordable for people without that bit in the middle, or a much lower cost bit in the middle. And I would say as well, in terms of like dignity in food supply, that I would be looking to I get your point about as it's getting towards getting knocked down in price, but also people don't have to wait for it to be knocked down in price before they're able to get access to good food. Ideally. So, but it's all in the picture. It's all in the mix. We're trying to get food out to people when it's at its freshest. So there isn't. And I was speaking to one of the farmers, saying that when they have a glut, they just can't get it to market because they're locked in as a wholesaler to the supermarket. So, and it's not quite the same with you, but for the arable sector, where if they have a lot of stuff, they don't necessarily have a market for it, or it's going at a very low price. So trying to improve that, and seasonal food, what's available is part of it. Not quite where you're at with the livestock, I get, Mark, and but definitely, yeah, healthier meat and better soil. Looking after the soil and the biodiversity they're all good messages for people to tap into.
Yeah.
I think you just got to hit the right price point for people as well. And if we can move from that to direct sales, there's surely going to be a benefit for people buying, not having to pay such a high premium for organic. If everybody was organic, it would be a different marketplace altogether.
We have to look in the future towards direct retailing, purely because at this moment in time, the supermarket who is buying our produce and is paying a premium, when the day comes that there's enough supply, they're not going to pay much. They're not going to pay that premium. That's not the way they operate.
Yes.
So, to maintain our profitability, we have to in the future be looking at direct retail.
What's their markup on what you sell to them? Of course, they put it through the abattoir as well, I guess. So it's not like for like in terms of what they're. But what would their markup be on a headache on a beast?
I couldn't. I've not got that information at hand. I know that reading.
I wouldn't tell you.
Reading some of the regenerative books that I've read, that certainly Gabe Brown's book, where he has done out in the States, done a lot of retailing, and across the board, he will quote the figure that the farmer receives 13 pence in the dollar.
Right. Yeah. I hear you.
Selling wholesale.
Yeah.
So his answer is that you must start retail and recapture some of the 87 pence that someone else is getting, 87 cents on the dollar that somebody else is getting.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point as well. And because it's such a low figure, I'm also saying, well, how can we meet in the middle? Because we're looking to get a better price to people to buy it. But as we move to more regen, it's only like 5% in Scotland. I don't know what the organic spread is, but as it gets to more, then the premium has to come down, because everybody's producing it, and everybody wanting to buy it. But it looks like there's space there for, there's leeway there for a good price for farmers and a better price for consumers. And more carbon credits.
In terms of
the health premium is just such a huge thing, isn't it?
But I think a lot of this, what has to be looked at as well is land use in Scotland. That the percentage of good arable land in Scotland is a very small percentage of the total land acreage in Scotland, and a lot of that goes to produce feeding grain. Or more of it goes to produce feeding grain, to produce intensive systems of poultry and pigs. Now that good ground should be growing seasonal vegetables, in my eyes.
And
instead of
biomass.
import, look at our balance of payments. The stuff that we're importing from other countries. That's a different issue. As where we stand.
Biofuels is the other scandal, isn't
it? Sorry, I've got to go, Mark. I really appreciate your insights there, and for sharing all of that. And Miles, thanks for organising it. Joe, thanks for your input as well. We may be in touch again as we move along. So I've got another thing to get away to, and I've got 5 minutes to get there. All the best.
Yes, thank you. Cheers now.
With the risk of starting a whole new conversation, but we can be short about it, I was wondering about your plans for chicken, and will that look like a very different market? Or is that just about eggs, or are you talking about chicken from meat? Because it's impossible to get hold of organic chicken.
Yeah, we have a couple of sources just now where we do buy organic chicken. but we want to produce our own. You know, our aim on this farm is to be completely self-sufficient in both food and energy. So, you know, to start with, we will produce enough chicken to keep ourselves going, and enough, well, right now we've got a handful of hens that keep us going. But, you know, we want to try and dip our finger into the water to see if it's going to be viable. You know, we have spent a bit of money this spring trying to build a mobile chicken house to hold 70 birds. And, you know, it's surprising if you're retailing those birds at £3 a half dozen, you know, that it comes to a lot of income. And if those birds can help disperse a lot of the dung behind the cattle as well, you know, it's reducing the pest burden on our animals. You know, it's got to work. It's a natural system.
Sounds good. Yeah.
You know, if we find this profitable and I can employ somebody full time in the future, we will scale it up. Yeah. But you know, I've no interest in producing organic stuff to go all over the place. If I'm retailing, I want it to be very local. I want it to be within a 10-mile radius of here. I think that's, you know, that's as much as our farm should be aiming to do. It's not my job to feed the whole country. My job is to feed my local community quality produce.
Yeah. Have you spoken to the guys at Moss Organics at all?
Sorry, could you come again, Joe?
Have you spoken to the guys at Moss Organics at all? We're not too far away from you and Alan.
So
he doesn't grow his produce, but he buys in organic produce and supplies it around the local area. Just a really good ethos. I like their.
I've left that sort of side of things mainly to Leslie, my partner. She's, you know, I've sort of left doing a lot of the rotational grazing. That she's way more genned up on what's going on locally in terms of local, you know. Local.
And another interesting guy to speak to in terms of veg growing is Angus Elder. Do you know him? In East Lothian.
They're right near you. Elder.
Yeah, it's not too far away. The Elders, Graham and Angus.
Near Our Lady.
Okay.
Yeah. Just very interesting guys to speak to about veg production.
They're famous for their weeding robot.
Yeah.
They were one of the first weeding robots in Scotland, I think. Yeah. Let's thank you very much, Mark, for your insights, for interesting discussion. I enjoyed it. I'm really sorry there's not more people to enjoy it. I think people will log on because sometimes that's what people do. They sign up so they can watch it later.
Well, certainly that's what I do a lot myself.
Oh, I'm glad you were there too, Camilla. I was wondering if you weren't there at all. But it sounds like piano lessons in the background that needs to be done too at this time of the night, isn't it? Yeah. I'm glad you came along too. And I hope more people can benefit from this online because we are recording it.
Okay. Thank you very much for enabling all of this, Nice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you,
we'll
Mark.
meet again in the future.
Okay. Cheers. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.